Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to answer one of your burning questions, and this is a question that I get quite frequently over on my Instagram page. If you haven't already followed me over there, please do. I am at birthbabybeyond with underscores in between, and I would love to have you over there. But one of the questions that I get quite frequently into my DMs is, what are your thoughts on placental encapsulation? And while I like to think that I am reasonably somewhere in between, very practical and pragmatic and type A and, love a nice piece of research, I'm also a little bit crunchy. And so when it comes to these sorts of things, I always like to sit around, what's my brain really telling me? What's my body telling me? Does this feel like a good decision? So here are the 3 questions and points of information that I like to bring up every time a client asks me, is this something that I would recommend? Let's dive right in. So step number 1, or question number 1 that I like to present to my clients is, do we really understand what the organ of the placenta is? What is its primary function? And our clever pregnant bodies create and build these clever placentas to both support and nourish our babies, but also to act as a real detoxification organ. It's almost like a gate. And what it does is it screens different pathogens, different toxins that we are ingesting, and stops those ones that are large enough, the cells are large enough to be able to be stopped and filtered from getting to our baby. And so if we think about it from that perspective, well, okay, it's sort of harvesting and holding on to and really filtering all these yucky things. The idea of then going on to eat that feels a bit gross. So that's like a really practical, pragmatic way of looking at it. Well, what does the placenta do? And does that feel like something that is reasonable or supportive to us? And I know there's been an awful lot of chatter around consumption of organ meats. But for me, there would be a huge difference between a really lush, nutrient-dense, nourishing organ meat and one that is used specifically for filtration purposes. So, yeah, and plus we also have access to so many other nourishing, nutritious ways of eating and things that we can eat to really give us that boost of whether it's, protein, amino acids, whatever it is, collagen, for boosting our bodies and supporting our bodies postnatally, that, we're not like the fox that needs to eat our placenta quickly to stop someone, to give us nourishment, but maybe to stop another animal coming to eat our live young. So that's the first thing that I like to bring up. The second thing that I like to bring up is the screening process or testing process and process in general, the processing of these placentas. So if you maybe work in the field of placental encapsulation, you will know this, but if you don't, what happens typically is you birth your placenta, and once it is separated from your baby, you put it on ice, and then either the person themselves or somebody will deliver it to whoever it is doing the placental encapsulation at home. Typically it's at home. Every now and then someone has a little office or clinic set up, but generally it's just an at-home, gloves-on procedure. And so maybe aside from having a wee look at the placenta, for the most part, it is not tested or screened for things like for infections or GBS. And so if you don't know that information, we are then risking the consumption and the sort of, introduction back into our bodies of something that is possibly tested positive. And so for me, that's something that's always worthwhile bearing in mind. And there's not a whole lot of policy around safe production and safe management for those who are working in placental encapsulation. So what one person might do, the next person might not do. Okay, and then the next thing I suppose that really from a lactation consultancy perspective is what exactly happens to our milk supply. And what we understand about our placentas is that it's really imperative in terms of that message that it's sending to our body that says baby's now on the outside, placenta's on the outside, we need to start making milk. And so what happens from a hormonal perspective is we birth our baby, we birth our placenta, and our progesterone, which is very much, in tune and reliant on our placentas, drops. as the placenta has come away. And then what happens is we have a spike in our prolactin, which is our milk-making hormone, and that comes up. So we can imagine that if we interfere with that process by the reintroduction of that progesterone, we're just sending really mixy-uppy messages to our body, but also from a hormonal perspective, we are interfering with that lactogenesis 2, that phase 2 of lactogenesis, whereby the milk, as you know, with the removal of the placenta and that drop of progesterone and the spike in prolactin, transitions alongside stimulation from the sticky golden colostrum to the more mature milk. And so interfering with that process from a lactation consultancy perspective can really negatively impact your milk supply. So for me as a lactation consultant, it's something that I always screen for in my history taking forms. I really want to know if we have a concern around low supply, if this is something that has been done. And I've seen a lot of mamas come back to me and say, okay, I'm never doing that again. And then further babies down the line, they haven't, and they've had no milk supply issues. And a lot of my colleagues will also say that this is something that they have seen very much negatively impact mummy's milk supplies. So if you plan on breastfeeding your baby, it is worthwhile considering the negative impact that encapsulating your placenta can have. If you have any further questions, please ask me. I will leave the associated blog post linked down below, and I hope you found this video helpful.